Hello and welcome to the Wellness and Hospitality Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining me, Emma Sleight, Head of Content for the world's 50 Best Hotels. Emma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Honestly, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Emma, I was fascinated by you at the event when you kindly let me speak in the event and be part of the panel on wellness. Tell us about you.
Gosh, well, I'll try and keep it short because we're not here to talk about me, and I'm not sure it's quite as interesting of you as you've just said. That was a big build-up. Um, I've spent my life within some form of the realms of storytelling. So I used to want to be a newsreader, so I did a postgrad in broadcast journalism, worked on various publishing houses, newspapers, and magazines, launched my own blog, fell in love with the world of food through the lens of travel and discovery, then sort of worked as a bit of a restaurant reviewer and a book columnist, a sports writer, and then eventually moved into the world of sort of brand work. So I worked for Marks and Spencer's as their head of food content for a long while, the heritage British food retailer. So sort of managing their social media, their creative direction around photography, how to tell stories through the mediums of magazines and editorial and online content, and through social channels. And then went back to being a freelance journalist before 50 Best came along. And then I've been with the brand for a couple of years now. So overseeing hotels and bars. So the judging, the voting, our academy chairs, and the content that we produce through the very many content channels available to us. So a journey that's always been about telling someone's story through food, drink, travel, pictures, whatever medium I can find.
And you do it wonderfully, Emma. I have to say, hats off to you. You do it wonderfully. Now, talking about the 50 bests, over the last couple of years, how have you seen the hospitality industry evolve? So, what's your
Sure.
perspective been on that?
I mean, it's interesting because I think you'll agree it's evolving so rapidly and quickly. It's almost difficult to crystallize these different pillars and identify how. So I guess one of the main things we've noticed is travelers themselves are actually seeking greater variety. So our perspective has had to evolve to reflect this broader landscape. So hospitality is very much no longer constrained to one single experience. It's more of a holistic experience of every single aspect of, say, travel from the moment you leave your home to the time you get back to it, for example, and the memories you make throughout. So we've expanded our platforms to try and match that expansive viewpoint and that desire for more variety. So we launched the 51 to 100 extended list, which in the world's 50 best hotels, which gives us more opportunity to spotlight 50 more exceptional hotels. This year, we were able to recognize hotels across 24 territories and 40 different cities, and the real breadth and range of properties recognized within the lists was really interesting. So if you look at it, you've got everything from those real traditional Grand Dame hotels to boutique properties to remote retreats to nature-driven lodges and also those sort of countryside estates. So we're really seeing that diversity of what people are responding to manifest in these lists as well. And I would say it's also how we've added and continue to add new special awards into our different award categories. So you'll be familiar with one we mentioned during the 50 Best Talks Unpacked entire event, of
Mm.
which you sat on a panel, but we added the Johnny Walker Art of Design Award for 2025. And that was a response as well to the fact that the notion of design, particularly in the space of hotels, has again grown, broadened, diversified. Design very much no longer just means the bricks and mortar or the architecture of the hotel or the color scheme they've chosen for their fabrics. It's that very much what is a holistic approach to customer centric design, from how a hotel makes you feel to what it sounds like to what it smells like, and how they use unique and personal approaches to make you feel something or remember something when you're both at the hotel and have left it. So we're looking at special awards that really reflect that changing desire and that changing market in that space.
I mean, it is fascinating the way you're saying, how it has evolved and what the market is really looking for, and you're adapting to that growing desire that you're seeing in travel.
It's the
And
same for, would you say it's the same for wellness? I know we talked a bit about
absolutely,
this on the panel. I mean, as you said, wellness used to be hotels just had a spa as
yeah,
standard,
and a
but
gym in the dungeon somewhere.
a gym in the dungeon, a spa, and maybe some a pillow spray in your room to sort of help you sleep. But it's very much what does wellness mean today for each individual guest, and also the reverse of that, who is still not getting what they need out of their experiences, who is still being ignored in the luxury market when you look at what consumers really care about.
And on that point, what are we not addressing as yet? Because you have such a broad perspective and a global perspective going from, as you said, that very traditional hospitality model to the new boutique hotels. What do you see to be the three main challenges as hospitality grows going forward?
I would say one of those is definitely intensifying competition. So there is a saturation of hotels in many markets, and that has a big impact. So a saturation can do one of multiple things. It can drive brand loyalty. So it can reduce a guest's willingness to want to try unfamiliar properties. But it can also increase pressure on smaller independent hotels who aren't able to answer that demand potentially. So the upside of that, however, though, is accelerated innovation. So people are really sort of pushing the challenges to be sustainably different in this growing field. How do I stand out? What is my personal point of view? Who am I speaking to, and why do I want them to come and stay with me? So I definitely think intensifying competition is helping brands establish who they are and who they want to be because they have to going forwards. Um, I mean, a big challenge. We talk about this word an awful lot, but sustainability.
Yeah.
Guests' demand for responsible travel is not waning. It's getting more intense and it's getting more focused as well. People know a lot more about sustainability now, and they have an idea about what they believe to be sustainability, which, if you take it on face value, is this incredibly broad subject matter. It's incredibly macro, but it's no longer a nice to have for people when they travel. It's becoming the benchmark. So hotels are really having to dig in deep to what does it mean for them? And not all hotel is a blueprint for another. They can't all adapt to this benchmark of we'll all do reducing waste, we'll all look at sustainable energy. It has to be, it's very much what's the environment they're within, what measures can they implement that they can actually own and put holistically through their sustainable architecture. So circular design, deeper engagement with the producers, artisans, communities, cultures that they sit within, as well as those other things around waste reduction, smarter energy use, and ultimately how they're built and what they're made from. All of these things are sort of sitting in this ever evolving ecosystem for hotels. So that's definitely a challenge in how they grow and change going forwards. And a third one, I would put it down to shifting consumer behavior, which is always the tricky one to put your finger on because, in the very nature, it's shifting
Yeah.
constantly
And rapidly right now.
all the time. So I think luxury spending is definitely moving away, as we've seen, from goods and towards high-end travel. People are willing to invest in experiences, in memories that build evocative, well, in experiences that build evocative memories for them that they can take away long beyond their actual stay at a place. So I think it was The Economist who quoted that the sector is projected to grow, I believe, from under 240 billion US dollars to $390 billion by the end of 2028. That's an enormous investment. So people are going to get certainly more demanding in what they need and certainly are going to be looking to get bang for their buck.
And I think here is where also we can say wellness threads in neatly, especially when it comes to that sustainability element where we're regenerating local communities, we're avoiding over tourism, we're not depleting resources. And when you're personalizing the experience for someone, because my wellness needs will be probably very different to yours, or my well-being, or my travel needs. I think wellness is kind of also fits within the entire hotel ecosystem and the travel ecosystem. And on the concept, of this ecosystem, how do you see the hotel ecosystem? So the hospitality ecosystem, better said. So that'll include hotels, bars, restaurants, any wellness related activities or any leisure activities or art. How do you see that evolving in the short, mid, and long term?
Sure. It's a big question. Particularly, it's an interesting point as well, because you're absolutely right. That sense of wellness, while it may have once been confined by bricks and mortar and by walls to just be a spa or a gym, people are expecting that link to wellness. You're right, in every element and aspect of their hospitality journey. You're right, from a restaurant to a bar and a hotel. So I think in the short term, it's very much going to be about wellness becoming fully integrated across the entirety of that guest journey. I think it was Anna Bjørstem who said it best from Raison d'être and Six Senses in the panel that you were on, who said people aren't wanting to do wellness anymore. They're not wanting wellness to happen to them. They want to be well. And that means that it has to run through the thread of everything they're doing. So I think that's probably going to lead to more cross collaboration in different industries. So that could manifest as visiting chefs who specialize in different forms of nutritional benefit or wellness in the food or culinary space, mixology and looking at drinking and cocktail culture and all of those elements intertwined into that space. But as well as a diversification of wellness practitioners and seeing that wellness practitioner as not someone who's necessarily fixed, but someone who collaborates and works across different environments outside of the traditional realms of a spa or a wellness facility. And then in the long term, in the midterm, sorry, I would say in the midterm, sustainability is just going to become standard, standard expectation across a standard expectation and a standard inclusion across all operations, from everything through to design to execution. And also, I think a stronger local integration we're going to see through whether that's culture, community, or local produce and food and beverage is all going to be intertwined as standard. And then long term, wow, it's hard to predict because it's constantly changing. But I guess we couldn't be on a podcast if we weren't talking about long term and not mentioning AI. So I guess using AI in the space of hyper personalization. So using AI to help drive what that hyper personalized wellness journey is. Because to your point, what I'm seeking in my wellness journey is going to be completely different to what you're looking for. So how can we utilize those tools to help us find those individual responses? And again, that expansion, wellness doesn't exist within a spa space, it exists holistically. So, expecting to see that notion or concept of wellness leaking into other lifestyle sectors. So, I think it was Alejandro Renal in his talk with us around the expansion of Four Seasons and how they're diversifying their bricks and mortar portfolio into yachts, jets, residences. So, how are we seeing those elements of holistic wellness coming into all of the spaces that exist, not just the hotel space?
And with this you have a very close pulse on what's happening in the industry. You also have a very close relationship with each of these properties and these different brands, and you're seeing them evolve. What are your top priorities in the coming years, and how do you plan to approach? Because it's certainly a very interesting time to be in the industry. It's growing rapidly, and there's so many moving parts to it. With an increasingly savvy and sophisticated consumer. So, what are your top priorities for the world's 50 best hotels?
Wow. I think certainly a big one for us is continuing to broaden and diversify. So we're looking at, well, we've already expanded our voting academy. So we added 4 new academy chairs this year. We'll look to continue to expand our academy, whether that's introducing new voters to keep it feeling fresh and dynamic, or whether that's introducing new awards to address, but also to celebrate these changing and shifting people, places, environments, destinations within that hotel space. And also just looking to highlight as much as we can the broad diversity and broad geographical diversity of where those exceptional experiences are happening. So we do notice an interesting thing. We noticed it particularly this year after the Asia's 50 Best Bars Awards that we held earlier in the year. So when that list launched back in 2016, and forgive me, I'm talking about bars here, not hotels. But when that list launched in 2016, about 70%, I think the majority of the listed or ranked bars were all in well-known capital cities where you would associate cocktail culture with being. And now it's completely diversified and spread. And what we're seeing is smaller communities or secondary cities popping up with this fresh approach and new spirit and inspiration in the cocktail space. So we expect to sort of see that happening in hotels as well. So potentially that doesn't mean we'll not continue to award or that we will not continue to recognize these stalwart places in these great cities with incredible properties. We just anticipate that seeing those different spaces around the world suddenly shooting to the forefront or sort of coming into the spotlight that really deliver something different or something that the market hasn't seen before. So that will lead us on to how we expand outside of the list as well. So it's a little misguided, but sometimes it's very easy for people to assume that the world's 50 best hotels and indeed the 50 best portfolio is only about that one night of awards and those specific lists that come out from those awards. But it's very much more than that. For us, it's an ecosystem throughout the year outside of the awards. And how do we continue talking about those exceptional stories, those interesting people, those properties throughout all of our content platforms? And we have lots of different levers to pull in that space. So we have 50 Best Discovery, which, while itself is not a list, to be on this database, you have to have received a number of votes through any of the regional or world voting polls throughout the year. So while those properties did not qualify for the lists, they are listed on 50 Best Discovery. So it gives people that opportunity to explore a bit broader, a bit deeper, and a bit further. So it works as it's basically like a travel guide. You type in a city or a space or a place, and it will throw up a whole list of hotels, bars, restaurants that aren't necessarily on our lists, but are recommended by our expert voting panels around the world. So it gives that broader diversity to discover more. And we're really looking at how we use this to create more interesting content for people to ultimately encourage them to build their own journeys and discover places that they wouldn't necessarily think of going. So whether that's through our newsletter or through our content online, our editorial stories, or whether that's through continuing to highlight properties on Discovery that people may not know about, we're very much driving towards that priority of growing the international global network and helping people discover more things.
And this is, so key because even in my book, The Wellness Assassin, I write, chiming in with Anna, where it's that key pre-arrival and that post-departure moment. You said that storytelling, that connection, that deep, meaningful moment, because it's not about the night or 2 nights they've booked at a hotel. Our clients are planning our guests are planning their travel months in advance, sometimes years in advance, sometimes it's part of the wish list. And this, initiatives like this just help put the spotlight on properties that are doing an amazing work, maybe have not made it to the list, but are still doing an amazing work. And also allowing consumers to see how hospitality is done in a very different way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think perhaps maybe 10 or 15, 20 years ago, you would pick you would start with the city and you would say, I want to go to this city because I've never been before. And then you'd go, well, where am I going to stay? And when you're there, you think, where am I going to eat? And then maybe if you were passionate, where am I going to drink, etc. If you were passionate about the bars industry. But I think very much now consumer behavior has shifted to that pinpoint of I want to eat that dish, or I want to drink that drink, or I want to experience that wellness experience. And then they build the journey or the travel around those singular or sometimes multiple very specific experiences. So it's how can you encourage people to look at more, travel more, and also understand that people are becoming very selective in what they want to experience and how they want to experience those memories. So how do we answer that need through constantly serving something new to try, something different, but also reminding people of all the other wonderful things out there to experience?
And, you mentioned this earlier on how wellness has become kind of central. It's a bit like sustainability, it's part of the hospitality experience. Um, what are your thoughts on how wellness fits within let's say, the world's 50 best portfolio narrative?
Well, I think you're right. I think much like sustainability, it's become more than just a nice to have. Wellness has become something travelers expect as standard. So having a wellness infrastructure is the bare minimum. I think all of the world's 50 best hotels in the list have some form of wellness element. And at many properties, wellness is at the forefront. So I'll give you a couple of examples of very specific wellness architectures, infrastructures within properties that were ranked in this year's list. So Chablais Yucatan, which was ranked at number 8. So Chablais Spa is very much one of a kind, and it could only really exist at Chablais. So it was the very first spa that was built around a cenote. So, a naturally formed underground pool, typical of this Mexican region and considered sacred by the Mayans. So treatment cabins are sort of built around this central cenote, and they very much host healing ceremonies in their traditional temezcal. So it's very much something that grew out of the space itself rather than outwards from a consumer demand asking for this. Um, I guess a good example of that as well is Soneva Fushi, so number 28 in this year's ranking. So, of course, no shoes, no news ethos of Soneva is very much attuned and focused on that concept of wellness itself. The idea of an island retreat is always going to be quite synonymous for a lot of people with that sense of relaxation. But taking it one step further beyond a typical, here's some spa treatments on an island in a beautiful ocean, they've very much gone down the advanced health focused route with hyperbaric chamber therapies, cryotherapies, IV drips, alongside that more conventional Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine. So it's very much around the what do you want as a person who visits there? Are you interested in that lovely sort of relaxing moment, or would you actually like some more focused, health focused, longevity focused treatments? And how do hotels respond to that essentially? So I think what we're seeing is hotels taking a very personalized, adaptable approach to that kind of wellness concept. And from our perspective as well, through an editorial lens, we're very much looking at how do we talk about that in an accessible way to people who might be interested in it, but not necessarily completely au fait with it. So we had a lot of articles we published recently with writers around the world looking at things like the most interesting or out there fitness regimes you can do at hotels, from, yoga on top of a cliff to tightrope walking, or ritual chanting and meditation in a cave. So how do you sort of bring those experiences to consumers in a fun way to make them realize there's more out there, and they might actually want to try those but didn't know necessarily how to ask for those or where to find those kind of treatments.
And on this subject of the amount of just wellness experiences, the breadth of wellness experiences at the diversity of it. Um, Traditionally, wellness and hospitality does not have the best track record. And as you mentioned earlier on, today's consumer savvy, sustainability is a basic, and so is wellness. And they know their wellness treatments. People don't want to do wellness, they want to be well, and they already have a regime. So, from your perspective, what would help wellness initiatives in hospitality build credibility and inspire confidence among both the hoteliers and the wider 50 Best community?
Yeah, it's a tricky subject. I think we at 50 Best Talks Unpacked 2025, we explored this a little we were talking about the shift towards long-term, culturally grounded and science-backed wellness. Now, those might sound like three separate things, but they're all interconnected as you and your fellow panelists articulated. So I think a really good example, as you quote Anna, I shall quote Ronald Akili from Death Ahead, Potato Barley, who highlighted how local culture specific to Desert Potato Head and their location in Bali, and that heritage of that environment and that culture and that community has shaped their wellness offering. So that hotel is very inspired by the Balinese way of life and their philosophy of try hita karana. So it's very much about living well and aging well. So it becomes synonymous with your way of life. It just becomes ingrained into your way of life rather than something that you pick up and put down on holiday, for example. It's very much an expression of how do you live well going forwards, but using the local culture and the local heritage to express those traditions. And talking about Anna, so I think she said that Six Senses, when it first started, they were looking at a brand that was low tech but high touch. So very much driven by human connection and feeling rather than gadgets in that wellness space. But that has shifted over time now, and they're very much going and leading on that concept of science-backed wellness. So with science-backed wellness, high tech is a must in that space. So but along with the must of having it, it also needs to be accessible and retain meaning. You're absolutely right. I think you used an example in the talks of potentially places thinking what they need is to get loads and loads of machines, but not necessarily know how to use them or why they're using them. So it's very much using high technology in that meaningful and accessible way. So that's what travelers are really looking for. So I'd say the believe Anna said Six Senses has gone from low tech to high touch to high tech and high touch, which is an interesting combination in that space. But it's that authenticity or that connection between science working in tandem with authenticity that's going to lead to that long-term shift into science-backed wellness that sticks around and cultural-backed wellness that's rooted in authenticity and accessibility.
Yeah, and I agree. It's like using wellness instead of a commodity, it becomes a source of place intelligence. So you're reviving local healing traditions.
Yeah.
And for those kind of treatments and services that we offer, have that science base as a backup to actually give the credibility it deserves. And in all the markets, I mean, you mentioned what, 24 territories, 40
40
cities.
cities.
I mean, I mean, across the whole world, basically. Um, all the regions you cover, how would you describe the current relationship between wellness and hospitality? And how do you see that evolving?
Hmm. So I think we've talked about it previously, but to reiterate what we've been discussing throughout this podcast, wellness has moved from standalone amenity to a key factor of why guests choose a hotel. It's what we were talking about earlier. If somebody sees or hears or reads about or is interested in learning more about a specific treatment or therapy or ritual or even just health trial or scan or something, then they are going to deliberately choose to go to that place to experience that offering. So at the moment, travelers are increasing to prioritize their wellness and their well-being. So hotels have to integrate that into their design, into their atmosphere, into their service. It needs to be seen in the entire guest journey, from the rooms to the food and beverage programming, for the wider experiences that they offer outside of the traditional spa space. So the thing that we know is going to evolve is how hotels evolve to give individualized and personalized experience to each and every guest who is looking for a very specific thing. So not only are they going to need to be seamlessly woven into the fabric of their stay, they're also going to need to really answer the individual needs of each guest. So we predict things like smarter rooms that support better rest as standard, more tailored food and movement options rather than just a standardized menu that people can pick from, and very much a bigger emphasis on mental and emotional well-being and how people of different backgrounds or different sensibilities might approach those different environments as well. And we talk about connection a lot, and that can mean many different things depending on who you ask. But we do predict more experiences that will be about connecting people, whether that's time spent in nature, whether that's small group classes, or simple rituals that help guests reset. So, in a tech heavy space, we predict people will continue to seek connection in some form. So, it's really an opportunity for hotels to find ways of telling their wellness story in that creative way through those different mediums.
And you have a very unique perspective. You have a close pulse as to what is happening from a consumer's point of view. What are they looking for? And you also have a very close relationship with all the properties out there. What advice can you give hoteliers out there? Or, for example, I speak a lot to landowners who
Mm.
want to create this boutique property with wellness integrated throughout the fabric of what they're creating. Um, how would you advise them to? What advice would you give them right now to be a success, to be in that top 50 list?
So we're very boring at 50 Best in the sense that we absolutely cannot offer any advice, because ultimately it is down to our voters to decide where their very best experiences are. But what we can say is, what we always say is, take a look at what you are doing. What is your property doing? Why is it doing that? And we encourage everybody, whether that's a bar, a restaurant, a hotel, a vineyard, with our new proposition, to really identify what they're doing and focus on delivering the very best experience, program, space, sense, menu that they can give, that only they can give. And just to see the awards as a welcome byproduct of that hard work. So, really focusing inwards on their reason for being and how they deliver their very best.
And talking about vineyards, that's one of the questions I also wanted to ask you. So, when the 50 best, the portfolio identifies emerging trends or decides to expand into a new sector like hotels and vineyards, what kind of data, insight, or feedback informs the decision, if you're allowed to say so?
Well, I mean, the short answer is lots and lots and lots of different factors inform it. But I guess a slightly less obtuse answer for you would be, so of course, we really, really very closely track industry trends, whether that's traveler behavior, emerging markets, innovation hotspots around the globe. I think a good reflection of that actually is our 50 Best Talk series, which very much focuses on what's not just what's happening now, but what is going to happen next, and how does that inform decisions that not just 50 Best, but broader businesses and hotels themselves will need to listen to in order to continue to evolve and stay sustainable in a changing society. Um, we also get feedback, of course, through the voting process from the 50 Best Academy, which for hotels is made up of more than 800 people around the world. And that's a mix of hoteliers themselves, it's a mix of travel writers and media, it's a mix of well-seasoned travelers who travel frequently and really sort of understand and see the market globally. And also from our academy chairs as well, where they tell us where are the experts excited to visit, what do they want to do as well, who are very switched on to their different regions that they head up. And you mentioned vineyards, so it's a really interesting one. As we were mentioning earlier, people are looking for those different experiences and building their trips around those experiences. And vineyards falls very much into that space. People now are very much looking at a vineyard, which could be in a most beautiful remote setting. It might have a hotel on site, it might not, it might have a fantastic restaurant, but they're thinking, I want to go and experience this wine tour, this vineyard experience. And they're building a trip around that visit to that vineyard. So taking on the world's 50 best vineyards into the 50 best portfolio was very much a reflection of where we see tourism diversifying and growing into those different spaces as well, of which vineyards is very much a part. So we believe that wine tourism very much represents a growing segment of gastronomy tourism, which we're committed to supporting. So we thought there's no better time than this year to bring the world's 50 best vineyards to life. So it did exist, I should say, beforehand for a good few years since 2019 under our broader William Reed umbrella. But this year it's come into the 50 best portfolio, and we will be revealing the rankings of the world's 50 best vineyards 2025 on the 19th of November at a live ceremony in Margaret River in Western Australia. So we're very excited about celebrating this year's cohort of ranked vineyards and getting people to discover them and maybe visit them, we hope.
Yes, I mean, I think vineyards are such a powerful and special place. I remember a project here in Spain that I did, gorgeous property. And that's also very related to wellness. There's nothing more place-based than
Then the
that.
terroir, the landscape, the land, growing from the land, biodynamic, organic, different approaches to growing and nurturing, but also the product at the end, the products that come out of the production process, how are those integrated? There are many, many different inroads in the wellness space in those climates, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I just love, I could just speak with you for like hours on
Me
end.
too. Let's just not go to any other meetings today. Let's just chat. Let's
Yeah,
just
we can
chat.
forget about the meetings, right? But Emma, it's been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close off?
No, just if you are unfamiliar with the world's 50 best vineyards or the world's 50 best hotels or the world's 50 best bars or restaurants, please do have a little look on our 50 best discovery site. And you never know, you might just discover something that it piques your interest and might spur a new discovery.
Absolutely. Keep your eye out for that. And thank you so much, Emma.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Sanal.